welcome back to my channel. Did I specifically put on a top and contact lens just to film? And I'm still wearing my PJ pants. Yes. Do I have a life? No. However, today I wanted to talk about my experience and general overview of communications and new media, more commonly known as CNM in NUS. Just because I feel like there might not be a lot of holistic overviews on the course online, at least not that I've really seen so far. So if you happen to be looking and you found this, then congrats. I think this may be the video for you. Or also if you're just interested in like what I get up to in CNM, yeah, just feel free to keep on watching. This video is in 4 main parts, and you can just skip to the part where it is more interesting for you if you'd like. The very first part I'll be covering is why did I choose communications and new media as a course compared to like other courses that you can take. Then secondly, why did I choose to go to NUS specifically for CNM. Thirdly, why did I choose to go to CNM camp and kind of like what goes on in a CNM camp, what you should take note of. Part 4 is like a general overview on the mods that I've taken so far in the faculty. And then lastly, I'll go through quotes that I've gotten from friends who also study CNM, so you'll see the perspective of other people and not just me. So in terms of how I decided I wanted to do CNM, it helped a lot that I already knew I am more of a humanities kind of person. Like even growing up, my math and science was never really great. In fact, I failed a lot of times. I think I was okay with like the math and sciences up till maybe P4 or P3, and after that it just went downhill, which is strange because the older I get, the more that I find sciences and math actually very fascinating. But I think school just ruined it for me by making it graded and like having young me internalize that I'm not good at these subjects. However, I was always pretty good at the humanities like English, Lit, social studies, history. Not saying that I would always be perfect at it, but I was definitely more naturally inclined and scored a lot better and way more easily compared to like the sciences and math. So in JC, my subject combi was H2 Chem, H2 Lit, H2 English Language and Linguistics, and H1 Math. So it was like a hybrid course, which means that I could have taken some more like geared towards sciencey kind of uni courses, and I took this course because I wanted to still have a sense of higher level science and not just go all the way in the humanities route just yet. However, I always knew like my natural inclination was towards the arts, and this is why when I was thinking about uni courses, they were mostly like either a mix of arts and science or just straight up arts. The 3 courses that I really considered most seriously was architecture, psychology, linguistics, and of course communications. So I'll just do like a rundown of why I rejected all the other courses that I was thinking about. Firstly, architecture was like kind of a dream because I liked the idea of dreaming out like a whole ass building and being able to like see its construction from the design all the way to execution. But I also knew after a while how much skills you actually have to like engineer. You gotta have skills in like drawing, illustrating, visualizing, using models, and there's also a lot of science and math involved, like to calculate the dimensions and doing physics to ensure that your building doesn't collapse, I guess. And seeing now my friends who are in Archi, I know that it's a super tough course, and I definitely wouldn't have had like the grit and passion to continue in this course. I knew that it was kind of just like a dream for me and it wouldn't really be realistic. For psychology is a really fascinating course. I think most people are generally interested in how the human body works, like our attitudes, our behavior, and like the whole psyche behind that. But I didn't see myself making a career out of it in like a practical way. Like I didn't really want to be a psychologist. I just didn't see how I would be able to apply the knowledge that I would learn in real life. So psych was also out. My 2 main contenders were linguistics and communications. Linguistics because I already had this background in ELL from JC, and I found the topic really interesting, learning about how like people communicated to each other through the language of like English. how that plays into society and a lot of the sociological background that comes with it, and communications by extension, because it's also like the study of how people interact with each other, except it's a lot more broad. How I decided between these two main courses I'll get into in the next section, which is why did I choose to go to NUS? Alright, to give some context on my university choices to begin with, I decided that I didn't want to go overseas to study, which already cut out like a bulk of unis. And the reasons why I didn't want to go overseas is that it was just a very scary thing to think about. I have to admit, I am not super brave. Like, even though I romanticize the idea of living alone, living abroad, and having like a very independent life away from family and like this whole other country, it really is scary to put it into practice though. And I felt that the unis in Singapore were good enough in terms of academic rigor to offer me like a quality of education, and I could do it while being surrounded by friends that I'd grown up with, like my family, and having that kind of support. So that's why I only applied to NTU, NUS, and Yale NUS College. So for NTU, my first choice was Wee Kim Wee School of Communications, followed by the Faculty of Linguistics, and I got straight up rejected from Wee Kim Wee. If you guys want to know, my rank points was 82.5, which isn't great for Wee Kim Wee standard, and it also explains why I couldn't apply to any of the prestigious courses like medicine or like law, which I didn't have any interest in anyway, but yeah, that's why. So I didn't have a chance with Wee Kim Wee, but NTU wanted me for linguistics after I went for their interview as well as their technical test. And I also got rejected from Yale NUS College, and I applied to Yale NUS because while it didn't have like the specific courses that I was looking at, which is linguistics and comms, I felt like it was still quite an artsy kind of college. I mean, it's all about liberal arts, and I thought maybe I could have found like an alternative major once I just entered and started doing the common curriculum. But it doesn't matter because I didn't even get to go to the interview anyway. It just narrowed down my choices for me. Then for NUS Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences, they got back really quickly, and I got in. So how I chose between NTU Linguistics as well as NUS FASS was kind of just like going through each uni's pros and cons. So for NTU, since I couldn't get into Wee Kim Wee, ultimately I decided that linguistics wasn't the course for me because it's just a very narrow field and very technical actually. It's almost like the science of a language. If you ever study linguistics, you probably know what I mean. Some parts can be very like scientific. Yeah, I just felt like linguistics was quite a narrow course, and I didn't want to go into anything specifically linguistics related in the future. Like, I wanted my options to be more broad. The pros of NTU was that if I did want to study in linguistics, the cohort was quite small. I think their intake for each humanities course is generally rather limited, so I think you'll definitely get like more specialized targeted modules there, and the rigor is probably quite good. But yeah, that's why I didn't choose NTU. And what NUS had going for it was that in FASS, I could do both communications and new media as well as linguistics because it's in one common FASS pool together. So I could just try and experiment both and see what worked for me. In addition to that, I also got accepted into College of Alice and Peter Tan, and I knew that living in NRC would make like a really big difference in my uni life, and it did. So that was also a factor as to why I chose NUS over NTU and ultimately comms over linguistics. At this point, I should probably add that I wasn't sure, and I'm still not sure exactly what kind of track I want to go to in terms of comms and new media. I know that the Wee Kim Wee, they have their specialized tracks, but in FASS, it's very, like, there are no labeled specializations for you to choose from. So you kind of just pick whatever modules suit your interest, and it's never really like set whether you want to go definitely into advertising or like journalism or marketing, that kind of thing. So with that in mind, what I wanted to get out of comms was more like a wider exposure to the various fields of communications and then decide later which one I wanted to make as my career. So after 2 years of trying out both CNM and linguistics, I can pretty much safely say that I made the right choice in going forward with CNM instead of doing like a double major or linguistics over CNM, because I had the chance to try out both types of modules in FASS. And actually the ones that I've always scored the worst in is linguistics mods, especially the ones which got very technical and analyzed the entire like syntax and grammar of the English language, which I never gone into such detail before, even in JC. And what I was really interested in, I found out, is the sociolinguistics aspect. And I think those are things that I can learn on my own, but I no longer have that kind of like passion for the technical and scientific side of links. So that's why I've stuck to CNM and I am now only a single major. Okay, so I'm at the stage where I know I want to do CNM already. So now we backtrack a bit to when I first decided that I wanted to go to NUS. So there's a lot of camps floating around. It's about the time where everyone's applying to go to so-and-so camp and like deciding who their friends are gonna be for the rest of their uni life. I decided to go CNM camp over arts camp or sports camp or like NUS camp. It's because I wanted to get to know people that were specifically from my course and that I knew I would be seeing more often than people that I would meet in other camps lah. Sorry, I have to switch camera, but my Canon is giving me a headache, so the rest of this video will be on my iPhone instead. And also, I'm a person that deals better with like small group situations, so I found the idea of like very big wild camps quite scary, and I interact better with people in smaller groups, so that's why I decided to go for a CNM camp. Overall, I found camp really fun. I think OCOM tried their best to make sure that there was like a lot of games and like bonding time for every OG. Yeah, I just really appreciate them like trying their best to talk to everybody and make nights fun, because like the true bonding is like at night where y'all will play games together or have those random HTHTs. That's what I found really great about CNM camp. And some tips that I guess I could give is really try to get to know people in the camp or in your OG. Just like genuinely find people that you vibe with, because it is true that like having friends who you can attend lessons and tutorials, lectures with together, it will make your uni life so much easier. And it's with people that have known you from like the very beginning, and they will relate to what you're going through with your course. Second piece of advice I would have is to pay attention when your seniors are talking about their module experiences or things to do with school, even the academic briefings that they organize for you. I find that these are actually really useful, even if they can be a bit like boring compared to the games, because you're listening to the experiences of something that you will have to go through one day. When I first came into uni, the whole like module registration and module requirements thing was very confusing for me. So it really helped to have someone like walk me through the entire process and have these like personal tips and tricks along the way, which you wouldn't know if like you don't talk to and you don't listen to seniors and during the briefings. Now I'm going to talk about a general overview on the modules in CNM. There is a caveat to this, as I've mentioned. I am a year 2 student. I have not gone through like a long list of 3K or 4K modules, which I've heard can be pretty good. Yeah, just know like the context lah, that I'm talking mainly about the 1K, 2K and like certain number of 3K modules that I've taken before. My general thoughts on CNM modules would be that it is true what they say, that they can be very theoretical. For NUS, a lot of the modules are based on theory and will have writing and essay components. There are a bunch of compulsory CNM mods that every CNM student has to take. For this group of modules, it's like the basics of communications theories. It's like a foundation that everyone has to go through, because you will be able to like pick up on these phenomena and concepts as you go through more in-depth courses. And they also comprise of some research modules, which I guess is useful because communications is a social science. So I mean, there are studies on communications, there are like actual research done with regards to this field of study. So I guess it is important to know like the basics of a communications driven research, both quantitative and qualitatively. As for the 2K modules that I've taken that are not within this branch of like the compulsory mods, they were slightly more technical. So I know that there are things like HTML modules or coding or UI UX related mods which I've not taken before. The ones I've taken are like media writing, so that's a bit more hands-on, something that you can practice your writing skills with. And also a lot of the modules have project work involved. So just if you can, try to find group mates that are good, or just be prepared to tank if you want to get a good grade. Because as with all types of projects, there will be slackers and there will be people who don't know what the hell they're doing. I have to say that the 3K modules are definitely a lot more fun and hands-on. The two that I've taken so far have to do with principles of communication design, which is basically like using Adobe, Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, coming up with more graphic elements, as well as like a videography mod where we had to use Final Cut Pro, and the final project was actually our own self-edited and self-shot video. So these are really a lot more personally interesting to me. I have a feeling that once you get and I get to the 3-4K stage, you'll probably be a lot more tailored to what exactly you want to go into, and the lower level modules are just for you to gain a sense of what CNM is like as a field of study. If you want to read like the detailed reviews of all of the modules that I've taken, you can just go onto my blog where I've written all of it down, so you can find all the details there. For the last section I want to go into, it's the quotes from friends, but as of now I haven't gotten it back from everyone that I asked yet. So I'm gonna take a pause on this and I'll come back another day to film and wrap up the whole video. It's been a while, but I'm back at roughly the same spot, and I even put on the same top so that it wouldn't get too confusing. But I have all my quotes ready, and here are the selections. So the first one, we have Lynette. It says, CNM classes are pretty alright. My only regret is not taking the Photoshop class. But it's okay, I guess. I can rely on PixArt and Visco. So I think this quote is pretty reflective of how 3K modules are like way more liked, I guess, in the CNM community. Like, it is more of a known fact that once you get to the high level modules, it's more specific towards what you want to learn in, and especially for like these design tool specific modules, they're definitely more popular. If you've heard of 3217 or 3230, those are definitely more popular mods. You might have a bit of a hard time trying to mod reg for them, but it's all down to luck lah. I don't really know how to game mod reg. I've never tried to game it. That is Lynette's quote. Next up we have Tze Yin, and she says, you'll learn more from an internship than the modules. A lot are theory based and irrelevant to working in the real world. For this statement, I wouldn't disagree. I mentioned myself how a lot of the modules are very theory-based, exactly what was said. And that's why I think going for internships is pretty important, especially if you're in CNM. And that's why they also have the compulsory internship that everyone has to go through. Otherwise, you'll never get to see what it's like practicing all these like theories and concepts we learn in class into real life lah. If you're curious on what kind of internships you can get as a CNM student, I have a video for that. You can go and check it out if you want. I think to this, there's no escaping it. A lot of the core modules are quite theoretical, and you should probably try to like brush up on writing and essay skills if you want to do really well. Janelle says, many ask me why I chose CNM, and the selling point for me is definitely the flexibility. I get to explore different aspects of the communication sector and learn different skills that will benefit my career. The friends I've met are definitely a bonus. For sure, I think like one of the biggest selling points for me was also that FASS is very big, and therefore you can explore like quite a number of modules, even things that like aren't specifically in CNM. Like, I don't know how NTU would work in terms of choosing your track, but for FASS, since everything is just like out there for you to choose, you can go into like see what the whole field is about rather than going into like a targeted one. So yeah, there's definitely the variety there. So Willa says, if you want to learn communications with a digital lens, CNM is definitely a place to consider. I have no regrets choosing CNM as a major because this is the place where future digital communication professionals are being honed. I do think that NUS really tries to add this like new digital lens spin to a lot of the modules, and it's even in the module name, communications and new media. They will have the context of like modern technology in mind so that it just becomes more relevant rather than learning about like traditional media all the time, which as we know is evolving lah. And finally, Bilian says, on top of the fantastic friends, 10 out of 10 fashions, and meaningful projects, CNM is an effective eye-opener to different specializations for one's hobbies and future careers. So that's it for today's video. I'm sorry if it was a bit random and like stitched together because of my technical issues and having to film on separate days and what. Hope that you found it a little bit helpful maybe, and if you have any questions about CNM or such, just feel free to hit me up and I will try to respond as knowledgeably as I can. Alright, I'm gonna go have lunch now because it's 12:30 and I'm hungry, and I just got vaccinated yesterday, so my head is a bit woozy. But I hope you guys have a great day and see you very soon.